Good morning. Uh, Thank you all for coming. It's good to see your faces and your respective environments. I've been reflecting on the stage of the practice period that we are in, and how suddenly the end is in sight. And it reminds me of so many things about, like, you go on a holiday, and we'll say it's a 2-week holiday. At the beginning of the 2 weeks, it seems like 2 weeks is going to be a long time in this place. And then before you know it, you've only got 3 or 4 days left. And suddenly, the end is in sight. So when I first started doing practice periods, I don't know at what point, maybe the second or third practice period, I came up with this little psychological trick. And it goes like this. We have skit night roughly in the halfway point of practice period. And it's as though if you haven't been taking the practice period seriously, then when it gets to skit night, there's the opportunity to say we're halfway through, so I can redouble my efforts. I can recommit. I can be extra diligent in following the schedule. The trick that I came up with was, chronologically, the skit night is the halfway mark, roughly. But psychologically, especially for this practice period, the one that has Rohatsu in it, psychologically, I would tell myself, energetically, this is the halfway mark. All the energy that I've put into the practice period, it's only half the energy. The next half goes into Rohatsu. So that's just a way of giving myself a little pep talk for Rohatsu Sesshin, to give Rohatsu Sesshin 110%. Give it everything that's left, okay, and more. And the reason that you go and more is so that you can be sure you've given it everything. So it's an interesting way to look at it. If we can look back on the whole practice period so far, the Seijiki retreat, the half-day sits, the all-day sit, the Dharma Talks, the Way-Seeking Mind Talks, all the service and Zazens in the morning and in the afternoons, all of that just represents half of the practice period. And the other half is about to begin. I'm not too sure if there's any value in that, but it's one of the things that I used to do. And I suppose I found it helpful on some level to think that way. In another sense, there's really no difference between a practice period and a non-practice period. And then within the practice period, there's no difference between a retreat or sesshin and non-retreat, non-sesshin, the regular practice period schedule. Eventually, we hope to be able to transition from one to the other seamlessly, because all our activities have the same quality of Zazen. And Zazen has the same quality as all our activities. So it makes less and less of a difference what we actually do. And then, on the other hand, if we've got another hand, that probably makes it 3. We can't just be there. We can't just say, it doesn't make any difference. We have to arrive at that point of it makes less and less of a difference what we do. That the quality of being present is in all our activities. And so practice periods and sesshin and retreats, they more have the quality of a top-up rather than a big step into something else. So I decided to call this Rohatsu a retreat rather than a sesshin. And same with the Seijiki retreat. Last year here at Engenji, we had the Seijiki sesshin. But this time I decided to call it a retreat. And same with the Rohatsu. But as I worked on the schedule for Rohatsu, I thought, this schedule is really like a sesshin. Maybe I should call it a sesshin. And then I thought, well, it's only like a sesshin if you do the whole thing. And people are not being asked to do the whole thing. I mean, you're welcome to, you're invited to. But it's understood that most people will be getting on with other things as well. So I said that makes it more like a retreat. Plus, I've been calling it in the literature Rohatsu retreat, and it wouldn't be too good to suddenly change it a week beforehand to calling it a sesshin. But there's quite a full-on schedule there for anybody who has the time and the desire to follow it. I am looking forward to sitting this Rohatsu retreat sesshin thing with you and with others who are not here this morning. I like to make Rohatsu sesshin a sesshin without toys, following the Uchiyama Roshi style, where we would have no chanting at all, just zazen. Zazen kinhin until it's time to eat, short rest period, zazen kinhin until it's time to eat. But I built in service into this retreat. And I was kind of thinking, well, maybe we could do the one without toys. Well, I have been calling it a retreat, and I didn't really give people any advance warning that it would be without toys. And then we've got to think about the fact that it's on the internet. So on the whole, I've decided to leave it with, we'll have morning service, noon service, evening service, and the refuges. I think there is a good Sangha building ingredient in those chanting services. And it's even more relevant because we're doing it online. If we are in a three-dimensional space, if we're all under the same roof, then that Sangha element can still be keenly felt, even when you take away the chanting. So maybe sometime if we continue with these Rohatsu retreat sessions, maybe sometime I'll try one online without toys, without chanting, without talking. We'll see if there's an interest and an appetite for it. Usually a sesshin, as far as I can make out, the standard sesshin is 7 days. And then we kind of make an adjustment and we do a 5-day sesshin or a 3-day sesshin or a 1-day sesshin. The standard is 7 days. I was fortunate enough to be at Tassajara once where Reb decided to do a 10-day sesshin. And the fascinating thing was, whenever I did a sesshin, I thought an extra day or 2 days would be just great. You know, you're so close to the edge of something. If only I had another day or another 2 days. And here was this gift of 10 days. Great. Same feeling at the end of the 10 days. If only I had another day. If only I had another 2 days. Amazing and wonderful. Don't know if anybody else has done a 10-day sesshin at Tassajara. I mean, I don't know if any of the other teachers have tried a 10-day sesshin. The 7 days, that goes back to the time of the Buddha, where he said if you were to do this practice of mindfulness, being fully present, you don't have to do it for 7 years. This is like one of these street vendors, where they open up a box and they show you what they're going to sell. And they say, how much do you think this is worth? Do you think it's worth 50 quid? No, I'm going to sell it to you today. Not for 50, not for 20, not for 10, but for 5. Right? Okay. So the Buddha said something like that. He says, if you really want to attain stream entrance into the stream, you don't have to do this practice for 7 years. You don't even have to do it for, I think it goes down to 7 months. You only have to do it for 7 days. And that's where the 7-day sesshin comes from. So you can feel now that I'm selling you short because we only have a 5-day retreat. Right? But feel free to start 2 days early. Give yourself the full 7 days. 7 days, if you can do this. Now, I think he is talking about, when Dogen says, if you can achieve continuity, this is called the host within the host. So if you can be continuously present, make this mindful effort and be present for 7 days, then you will enter the stream. And then Soto Zen will say, well, if you don't enter the stream, it doesn't really matter because you already are the manifestation of Buddha nature. And you kind of poison it a bit if you want to get something from it. So does that mean that Soto Zen is in contradiction with Shakyamuni, whose complete manifesto was to attain the end of dukkha through seeing things as they really are? Probably depends upon your audience, who you are talking to. If you're talking to a bunch of samanas, people who are already engaged in various ascetic practices and who have purposefully left the home life in order to attain or free themselves from the cycle of duality, the cycle of rebirth. If you're talking to them, then maybe saying, if you can maintain this practice for 7 days, you will enter the stream. You will see things as they really are. And if you're talking to people who are not in a position to do that, then maybe you say, it doesn't really matter if you don't attain the way, because you are, as you are, the manifestation of Buddha nature. You are emptiness incarnate. And both are true. We don't need to enter the stream. We don't need to have insight. But it is there if you want to make the attempt. It is there, and you should know that it is there. But it's not imperative, because whatever happens, it is the unfolding and manifestation of the Buddha way. There's a wonderful line in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. In fact, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind is made up of wonderful lines. So it's hard to quote it without preempting it or prequelling it with, there's a wonderful line. There are many wonderful lines in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. The one that I'm thinking of is, even to be attached to something beautiful is Buddha's attachment. And this turns things around. In the Pali Canon, you get the impression that the goal is to end attachments. And that can be seen as liberation. To end attachments. Attachments are the bad guys. Right? But Suzuki says, even to be attached to something beautiful. And that could be an attachment to the Bodhisattva ideal. It could be an attachment to the Bodhisattva way. It could be an attachment to the beautiful forms and ceremonies of Soto Zen. It could be an attachment to your beautiful home, to your partner and family. It could be an attachment to the beautiful movies available on Netflix and Amazon Prime. But whatever. It could be an attachment to the full moon or to the clear starry night. An attachment to the sight of Venus in the morning or Venus in the evening. Even to be attached to something beautiful is Buddha's attachment. That is our practice. Our immersion into the understanding that everything is impermanent makes our attachment Buddha's attachment. When we find ourselves attached to someone or something, we don't give ourselves a hard time about it. We just say, this is Buddha's attachment. And in that, we acknowledge the impermanence of who and what we are attached to. And we acknowledge the impermanence of ourselves, who is attached. In this attachment, we have the understanding that this attachment arose from causes and conditions. It arose from the sea of emptiness or the ocean of emptiness. And this attachment will disappear. So in this way we understand that our attachment is Buddha's attachment. And the associated pain with it is Buddha's pain. It's the way things are. Eventually, the trees let go the leaves. When we read about ending attachments, I'm not sure that attachments are ever fully and finally ended. I think maybe that would be parinirvana. So did the Buddha, as he walked the earth, did he have attachments? Certainly before he attained enlightenment, he had attachments. And probably some of them carried over into after his enlightenment. Did he develop new ones since his enlightenment? Don't know. But I kind of feel that it's not so much that he didn't develop new ones. It's more that they became softer and more attenuated. That they didn't become as deep and ingrained as our attachments usually become. And so the sense of loss when Mahapajapati passed away, I'm sure he felt grief. I'm sure he felt loss. I'm sure he felt sadness. But I also feel as though his practice, his understanding of this is how things are, his acceptance of this is how things are, meant that he was not torn apart by those feelings. This is the boat in which we all sail. Continuous renewal, continuous falling aside and renewal, continuous death and birth. And so, my friend, be not afraid. We live so lightly here. Isn't that a wonderful thought? Be not afraid. We live so lightly here. I remember, 20 years ago, visiting my uncle when I was relatively new to Buddhist practice, and he really liked to get to know what was behind it. Well, not just with Buddhist practice, but if somebody had gone to him with a passion for football, he would want to know why you were passionate about football. If I went to him and was doing this Buddhist path, he wanted to know what was behind it. He said, what do Buddhists believe? I said, well, different Buddhists believe different things. He says, no, but there has to be something that unites it. I said, well, actions have consequences. Yeah. What else do you believe? That, like, everybody, that's too easy. So I said, there's nothing to worry about. And he thought, I like that. Yeah. There is nothing to worry about. Everything will be and is being and always has been taken care of. We live so lightly here. And perhaps that's what insight is. To see that we live so lightly here. And not just to see it, but to realize it, to make it real. It is in love that we are made. And in love, we disappear. This practice, whether you feel it or not at the moment, this practice is the practice of love. We love this life, and we love this life of practice. And in getting to that place where we can see the almost unbearable lightness of being, in getting to that place, it might take a lot of serious effort. So as we approach Rohatsu, we can approach it as an opportunity to put forth that serious effort, or as an opportunity to enjoy this lightness of being. Where the entire spectrum of our life experience, the deepest sorrows and the deepest joys, are both present. And Suzuki Roshi said, we should appreciate this limited life. We know that we are limited, that we cannot do everything. But in just doing one thing completely, we are everything. So I'm happy to share this journey with you, this journey called WOPP, the Winter Online Practice Period. And depending on how you think of it, as we enter into the second half, or we enter into the final phase, it's good to be on this journey with you. It's great to have your companionship and your practice. And I hope that we can practice together endlessly, forever. Although we will all die at some point, our practice will continue endlessly and forever. It's good to be here with you. Thank you very much. I will do my 3 closing bows and then see if there are any questions or answers. And then see if